After 12 years without family invitations, they unexpectedly showed up at my luxury house. The front door of my beach house opened with a soft, confident swing, the kind that makes you feel like you finally own your life. Salt air drifted in behind me, and sunlight spilled across the marble floor like a spotlight. Two people stood on the porch. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. My daughter. And the man she married. 12 years can turn living people into legends. In 12 years, you stop expecting footsteps, stop checking your phone, stop imagining apologies. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head because you get tired of performing in an empty room. Yet there they were, older, thinner, wearing the kind of smiles people put on when they're asking for something before they've even said hello. My daughter's eyes flicked past my face first, past my hair, past the lines time had carved. Straight to the house. The cream leather sofa. The art framed like it belonged in a magazine. The wide windows with the ocean spread behind them like a promise. The huge television mounted on the wall. The quiet luxury of a place paid for in full, without anyone's permission. Her husband's gaze did the same, but faster, greedier. Like a man counting numbers he hadn't earned. Mom, my daughter whispered, and the word came out fragile, as if she wasn't sure it still belonged to her. We need to talk. I didn't step aside. I didn't rush forward. I didn't ask about the children I'd never held. I simply looked at them. My daughter wore a faded green dress that once might have been cheerful. Now it looked like it had survived too many wash cycles and not enough good days. Her shoes, synthetic, cracked, told a story her mouth hadn't started yet. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides, fingers twisting at invisible threads. Her husband had the same face I remembered, but time had sharpened him in the wrong direction. His shirt was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. His jaw was set with the stubbornness of a man who still believed he owed the world. I let silence stretch, long enough for the waves outside to fill the space between us. Long enough for their forced smiles to fade into something closer to fear. Talk, I repeated, tasting the word like it might be bitter. How interesting. My daughter blinked rapidly, as if her eyes were suddenly too dry. Her husband cleared his throat and shifted his weight. It's been a long time, he said, with the careful tone people use when they want you to forget details. 12 years, I corrected, calm as glass. Not a long time. 12. My daughter flinched at the number, like it carried weight she hadn't expected me to place on the table. Behind them, the sky was bright. The town down the road was the same town that had watched me age alone, watched me haul trays of baked goods to the market, watched me smile politely when neighbors asked about my child, as if love didn't have to show up to count as real. Now my daughter and her husband stood at the entrance to my new life like two actors who had missed every rehearsal and expected to walk on stage anyway. Can we come in? My daughter asked. Please. I studied her face. Once, I would have opened the door so fast my hands would have shaken with relief. Once, a single mom would have cracked me open like an egg. But years change you. Loneliness changes you. Learning to survive without being chosen changes you. I stepped aside with an elegant gesture, not because I was welcoming them, but because I wanted to see what they would do when the door opened. They walked in like people entering a museum where they couldn't touch anything but wanted to touch everything. Her husband's eyes swept the room, lingering on the expensive details. Italian leather, polished stone, the quiet gleam of surfaces cleaned by hired hands instead of exhausted ones. He tried to look casual about it. He failed. My daughter moved behind him the way she used to, even as a grown woman, half protected, half shadowed. Her gaze bounced from object to object, as if she couldn't decide whether to admire or mourn. I closed the door gently, sealing the ocean breeze inside with us. Sit, I said, pointing to the sofa. If you've come all this way, you must have a lot to say. They sat. Or rather, my daughter perched like she might bolt. Her husband sat like he owned the space he occupied, but his foot tapped faster than his confidence could hide. I stayed standing for a moment. It felt important not to lower myself into the room the way I used to, like a woman desperate to keep peace. I had spent too much of my life shrinking to make others comfortable. Finally, I sat in my armchair, the one angled toward the windows where the sea could remind me who I belonged to now. My daughter took a breath. "We know we hurt you," she began, voice shaking. "We know we hurt," I repeated softly. "That's a gentle word for erasing someone." Her husband leaned forward, trying to take control the way he always did. "Annabelle." "Don't," I said, and the single syllable cut cleanly through him. "You don't get to speak first." He blinked, startled, as if he was still expecting the version of me who apologized for having feelings. My daughter's eyes filled immediately. Once, those tears could have turned me into water. Now they landed on the floor between us and stayed there, uncollected. "I didn't mean for it to happen like that," she whispered. "Everything got complicated. Work, the kids, life." "The kids," I echoed, and the words felt like they scraped the inside of my throat. "The children I've never met." Her shoulders shook. "Mom, please." I leaned back, letting the chair support my spine the way no one else had for years. "Do you know what 12 years looks like from my side? It looks like birthdays with one candle. Holidays with a plate set for nobody. It looks like pretending you're fine so strangers don't pity you." Her husband opened his mouth, then thought better of it. For a moment, my mind drifted the way it always did when the past tried to drag me under. I saw myself in my old apartment, small kitchen, smaller table, counting coins for flour and eggs. I remembered the first Sunday I took my pies to the farmer's market, hands sweating as if I were a teenager again, terrified of being rejected. But the market hadn't rejected me. People had bought my desserts, complimented my crust, asked for my recipes. They called me talented, called me kind, paid me with cash and genuine smiles. Strangers had given me what my own blood refused to offer: acknowledgement. I remembered cinnamon blooming in the warm air. Vanilla is thick and sweet. Coconut toasting until it smelled like comfort. I remembered waking before dawn, my hands aching, but my heart refusing to quit. That routine saved me. Not because it healed the wound, but because it gave me something to do besides stare at the phone. I came back to the present and found my daughter staring at her lap, as if she could fold herself small enough to disappear. "Why now?" I asked. "Why after 12 years of silence do you suddenly remember where my door is?" My daughter's mouth opened, then closed, like she was searching for an answer that wouldn't condemn her. Her husband's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked once, just once, to the side table where a sculpture sat, something sleek and expensive. He swallowed. "We heard you were doing well," my daughter said carefully. A small laugh escaped me. Short, bitter. "Doing well." She flinched. I had not done well for most of those 12 years. I had done enough. I had survived. I had stitched myself together with work and pride, and the stubborn refusal to beg anyone for love. And then, 3 months ago, the universe had shifted. A lawyer's call. A name from the past. An aunt I barely knew, a woman who left long ago and built a life far away. She had died, and she had left me everything. Money, property, investments, and a letter that felt like a hand reaching through time to grip my wrist firmly. In that letter, she wrote that she had seen my life from a distance. That she had noticed how alone I was. That she wanted my final years to belong to me, not to my grief. That inheritance hadn't fixed my heart. But it had bought me space. It had bought me air. It had brought me choices. It bought me this house by the sea. And now, like sharks sensing blood, the people who forgot my existence had found it again. My daughter wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. "Mom, we want to fix things." "Fix," I repeated. "You can't glue 12 years back together like a broken plate. Even if it holds, the cracks still show." Her husband exhaled sharply, impatience leaking through his mask. Then he forced his voice into something softer. "The children," he said, as if the word were a key. They should know you. My stomach tightened, not because I believed him, but because I felt the weight of what was stolen. Grandchildren growing up without my arms around them, without my stories, without my kitchen smells and birthday songs. My daughter nodded quickly, taking the opening. They ask questions, Mom. They ask why they don't have a grandmother like their friends do. And what did you tell them? I asked. Her mouth trembled. We didn't know what to say. The honesty of that broke through her carefully arranged apology, and for a second I saw what she truly was beneath all this. A woman carrying regret too heavy for her own shoulders. But regret does not erase choice. And you're saying this now, I said slowly, because you miss me? Yes, she whispered too fast. I looked at her husband. He didn't answer. He didn't even try. His silence was louder than her tears. The ocean outside surged and fell, patient and endless, like it had all the time in the world for human drama. I envied it. I folded my hands. Tell me the truth. Why are you here? My daughter glanced at her husband, and that single glance told me everything. Not love. Not a reunion. Not healing. Permission. Her husband cleared his throat again, the same nervous habit he'd had when he wanted to persuade someone. He looked me straight in the eyes, and for a moment I saw the calculation he'd brought into my home like mud on his shoes. Finally, he spoke. The business failed, he admitted. 6 months ago. We lost our savings. We're behind on everything. He paused, as if the words tasted like shame. We need help. The room went still. My daughter's sob caught in her throat, and she pressed a hand over her mouth as if she wanted to swallow the truth back down. I stared at them both, feeling something inside me settle into place with chilling clarity. So that was it. Not a miracle of conscience. Not a sudden ache for the family. Not the kind of love that shows up when there's nothing to gain. Just need. Just desperation. Just the scent of money leading them back to the mother they could afford to forget when she was poor. I leaned back in my chair, the leather soft under my palms, the sea glittering behind them like it was watching too. How much? I asked. My daughter gasped softly, like the question offended her. Her husband didn't hesitate. 100,000, he said, blunt now. That would stabilize everything. I didn't blink. I didn't react. I let his number hang in the air like smoke. $100,000. 12 years of silence. A transaction. My daughter's voice came out broken. Mom, please. We're family. Family. The word sounded different now. Less like a home, more like a weapon people swing when they want to force a door open. I looked from my daughter's tear-streaked face to her husband's tight, impatient jaw. I listened to the ocean behind me, steady as truth. Then I spoke, quietly, so quietly they had to lean in to hear me. If you want me to even consider this, I said, you're going to tell me the real reason you abandoned me. Not the soft version. Not the excuses. The truth. Their eyes met each other again, quick and panicked. And at that moment, I knew part 2 wouldn't be about money at all. It would be about what they had done to my life, and whether they were finally brave enough to name it. Part 2. The silence after my demand didn't feel empty. It felt loaded, like a gun on a table. My daughter's eyes darted toward the windows, toward the ocean, as if she could escape through the view. Gregory's fingers tightened around his knee. He tried to look calm, but his throat moved with a dry swallow. The truth, I repeated, soft but immovable. Not what sounds better. Not what makes you look less guilty. What actually happened. My daughter's lips parted, but no sound came. Her shoulders rose and fell in shallow breaths. I watched her closely, the way you watch someone holding fragile glass. One wrong movement, and it shatters, except this time, I wasn't the one who would be cut. Gregory leaned forward again, attempting that familiar posture of authority, as if he could steer the conversation back into the lane he wanted. Annabelle, we're here to fix things, he said, voice measured. Digging up every detail from the past isn't. It's the only thing, I interrupted. My tone wasn't loud, but it was final. Because I spent 12 years living inside the consequences of your choices. So no, you don't get to rush past them. His mouth twitched, annoyed. He looked at Eleanor, my daughter, like she was an employee failing to follow a script. Tell her, he murmured, almost under his breath. That single command did something in my daughter's face. I saw it there, plain as daylight. The old habit of obedience, the reflex to shrink. The same reflex that had stolen my life in slow, silent pieces. Eleanor stared at the carpet, and her voice came out thin. Mom. It started small. Nothing like that starts small, I said. It starts with one lie you accept because it's easier than arguing. Then it grows. She flinched, but she didn't deny it. It was after I married him, she continued, forcing the words out like stones. At first, he said we needed boundaries. Gregory's jaw tightened. That's not wrong, he muttered. I didn't even look at him. Keep going, Eleanor. She drew a shaky breath. He said mothers-in-law ruin marriages. That they get involved. That they create conflict. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. And the conflict was... What? That I loved you. That I called. I asked how you were. Her eyes glistened. He said you were too present. I leaned forward slightly. Present. Yes. Guilty. Gregory's face hardened. You didn't just call, he snapped. You always had opinions. You always had suggestions. Saying be careful with your savings is not sabotage, I replied. Saying don't work yourself to death is not a threat. You made her doubt me, he said, and the sudden sharpness in his voice filled the room like a slap. You made her second-guess our decisions. My daughter's shoulders curled in on themselves. It was painful, watching her still respond to his tone after everything. After all these years, after all this desperation. He still thought he could win by speaking louder. I turned my gaze to him at last. So you removed me. Because you didn't want your wife hearing any voice but yours. His nostrils flared. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, I replied calmly. You just used nicer words. My daughter's breathing hitched. She rubbed her hands together over and over, the way she used to when she was a child nervous about a test. I remembered those hands small and sticky with cookie dough, reaching for me, trusting me. That memory sat inside my chest like something that used to be warm but had gone cold. Mom, she whispered, I didn't think it would become this. Yet it did, I said. So tell me the moment you decided I was external interference. Her face drained. For a second she looked like she might stand up and run. Then she spoke, and the words landed on the marble floor like a dropped plate. It was a rainy day, she said. October. I came to your apartment. My throat tightened. I remembered it too. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet. Quiet is what makes pain permanent. Go on, I said. She swallowed hard. Gregory told me I had to choose. That if I didn't put him first, our marriage would fail. He said you'd always be there, but a husband won't be. Gregory's eyes flicked away, as if the truth was too bright. And you believed him, I said. My daughter's tears spilled over. I wanted my marriage to work. And I became the prize. I finished for her. She nodded, shoulders shaking. Gregory leaned back, exhaling in frustration. You're acting like she's a child who can't make her own decisions. That's interesting, I said. Because you're the one who keeps speaking for her. His eyes snapped to mine, anger flashing. We came here because we're desperate, yes. But that doesn't mean we're monsters. I held his gaze. Tell me something, Gregory. During those 12 years, did you ever once suggest she call me? He opened his mouth, then closed it. My daughter whispered, no. A silence fell so heavy it felt like a physical thing pressing down on us. Outside, the ocean continued its rhythm, uncaring, eternal. Inside, my living room held the wreckage of 12 years in the space between three bodies. I stood and walked slowly to the window. I needed the distance, the air, the reminder of what peace looked like. The sea was bright today, glittering like 1,000 coins tossed by a generous universe. Seagulls moved like small white commas in the sky. Behind me, my daughter sniffed quietly. Gregory shifted restlessly. "You said I was too present," I said, still looking out. "But do you know what I was? I was alone. Your father was dead. You were all I had left that was living and mine." My daughter's sob broke louder at that, but I didn't turn. If I faced her, I might remember too many things at once. I remembered the Sundays at the farmer's market like they were a second life. My folding table. My hand-lettered sign. My pies lined up like soldiers: apple, cherry, pecan, coconut cream. My cakes were wrapped carefully so the frosting wouldn't smear. My muffins in neat rows, steaming faintly in the morning chill. I remembered people calling me dear and honey with more warmth than my own family. I remembered Martha, sharp-eyed, sturdy, the kind of woman who didn't sugarcoat reality, buying 3 pies even when she claimed she lived alone. "I buy them for my neighbors," she'd said, and then she'd leaned in like we were sharing a secret. "And because I like giving my money to women who don't fold." She was the one who noticed when my smile became too practiced. The one who asked questions that didn't allow lies. "Where's your daughter?" she asked me once, directly. "She's busy," I said automatically. Martha didn't accept it. She held my gaze until I looked away. "Busy for 12 years?" she asked. "No, Annabelle. That's not busy. That's the choice." That sentence had hurt worse than anything, because it forced truth into the light. It forced me to stop hiding behind excuses that protected my daughter from judgment, even when she didn't deserve that protection. Now, in my beach house, with my daughter and her husband sitting on my expensive sofa like 2 people waiting for a bank loan, Martha's voice echoed through my mind. "That's not busy. That's a choice." I turned back to them, letting the ocean behind me frame my words like a warning. "You didn't just drift away," I said. "You didn't get busy. You made decisions. Over and over. Every holiday. Every birthday. Every time your children get sick. Every time you moved houses or changed jobs or celebrated something, you decided I didn't matter enough to include." My daughter covered her face. "I was ashamed," she whispered. "Ashamed of what?" I asked. "Of how long it had been," she said, voice muffled behind her hands. "At first I thought we'd reconnect soon. Then months passed. Then years. And every year it got harder. I didn't know how to come back without admitting what I'd done." So she stayed gone, I thought. Because confession felt worse than cruelty. Gregory scoffed softly. "We didn't think you were suffering like that." I stared at him. "You didn't think an abandoned mother might suffer?" He threw his hands up slightly, defensive. "You're twisting everything." "No," I said. "I'm untwisting it." I walked to the bookshelf and ran my fingers over the framed photo I had shown them earlier. Eleanor at 5 years old, missing front teeth, clinging to me with pure trust. "Do you know what I did during those years?" I asked, not waiting for an answer. "I lied for you. I protected you in conversations you weren't even present for. When people asked where you were, I said you were busy. When they asked why you never visited, I said you had work. When they wondered if we'd had a fight, I said no, everything was fine." My daughter's shoulders shook harder. Gregory's face tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "I protected your image," I continued, "because I couldn't bear the idea of people thinking you were cruel. I couldn't bear the idea of the world seeing you the way you were treating me." My voice dropped. "And do you know what you did in return? You let me disappear." The room sat in that truth for a moment. Then Gregory, Perhaps sensing that guilt wasn't moving me the way he wanted, shifted tactics. His voice softened, practiced. Annabelle, he said, we made mistakes. We can acknowledge that. But we're here now. We want to rebuild. Isn't that what matters? I looked at him steadily. No. What matters is why you came. My daughter's head jerked up, eyes wide. Gregory's shoulders stiffened. You didn't come because love pulled you back, I said. You came because something else pushed you. My daughter's gaze dropped again. Gregory's voice went flat. Fine. We're struggling financially. And the moment you heard I wasn't struggling, I said, you found my address. My daughter whispered. It wasn't only that. I tilted my head. Then tell me what else. Her lips trembled. The kids, she began. I held up a hand. Careful. Don't use them like a shield. Not in front of me. She flinched as if I'd struck her, but she nodded. My parents are cold, she admitted, eyes glossy. We're staying with them, and they don't help. They blame us. They fight with Gregory. They criticize me. The children hear everything. I started thinking about you. Because you needed softness, I said. You needed comfort. Yes, she whispered, defeated. And you were always comfortable. That hit me unexpectedly. Not because it absolved her, but because it reminded me what I had been. For her, for years. I had been the one who held the world steady when she was scared. Then she chose a man who saw that steadiness as competition. Gregory spoke again, irritation leaking through. Annabelle, we can sit here all day dissecting the past, but that won't solve anything. I turned my full attention to him. It will solve something. It will solve the lie that you're here out of love. His eyes flashed. So what? You want us to grovel? I smiled slightly. No. I want you to be honest enough to understand why I might say no. My daughter's voice cracked. Mom, please. The house. The house, I repeated, and the word tasted like irony. You mean the house you kept me out of? The house I was never welcome in. The house your children grew up in without ever hearing my name spoken with kindness. She sobbed harder. Gregory's face hardened again. You're punishing the kids. No, I said. You are. You punished them when you denied them family. You punished them when you made choices that brought you to foreclosure. He looked like he wanted to argue, but I saw the calculation in his eyes. He was measuring how far he could push before he lost the deal entirely. My daughter's voice sounded small. If you don't help us, we'll lose everything. I walked to the kitchen, not because I wanted to escape the conversation, but because movement kept my body from shaking. I poured myself water, listening to it fill the glass. When I turned back, they both watched me like I held their fate in my hands. In a way, I did. But I didn't feel powerful. I felt clear. For years, I'd imagined this reunion differently. I imagined tears that meant something. Apologies that came before desperation. I imagined meeting my grandchildren with joy, not as bargaining chips in a financial plea. Now reality stood in my living room with cracked shoes and wrinkled shirts and rehearsed sorrow. I took a slow sip of water. Here's what I know, I said. If I write you a check today, you'll say thank you. You'll promise change. You'll talk about family. And then, when the crisis passes, when the bills are paid and the house is safe, Gregory will decide again that I'm a problem. Gregory's jaw tightened. My daughter's eyes widened with fear. No. I swear. Don't swear, I cut in. You swore things before. You swore you loved me. Love didn't stop you from disappearing. Her face crumpled. The ocean light shifted, and the room brightened and dimmed like a heartbeat. I let my gaze settle on my daughter. Really settle. Not on the grown woman begging, but on the child she used to be, the one who clung to me and called me her best friend. I wondered where that child went. I wondered if she could still be reached, or if she was buried under 12 years of choices. "Tell me something," I said, voice quieter now. "When you were cutting me out, did you ever think I might die?" Her eyes snapped up. Horror flooded them. "No. Did you ever think I might get sick and have no one?" I pressed. Tears spilled again. "No, Mom. Did you ever imagine me alone on Christmas?" I asked, each word steady. Sitting with a small tree. Eating alone. Talking to photographs. She shook her head, sobbing harder. I nodded slowly. "That's what makes it worse. Not just that you left. But you didn't even picture me as a real person while you did it." Gregory shifted uncomfortably. "This is getting dramatic," he muttered. My eyes snapped to him. "There it is," I said softly. "That word. Dramatic. The same word you used to dismiss my feelings back then." My daughter's head whipped toward him. "Gregory, stop." He stared at her, surprised by the firmness. I watched their exchange carefully. Something was changing, small but visible. Desperation was cracking the old pattern. She was seeing him. Maybe for the first time in years. I set my glass down. "Here's what happens next," I said. "You're going to leave today without money. Not because I'm cruel, but because I don't fund people who treat love like a currency." My daughter's breath caught like she'd been punched. Gregory's face hardened. "But," I continued, raising a finger before they could speak, "that doesn't mean the story ends here." They both froze, hope flickering instantly. Too fast, too hungry. I looked directly at my daughter. "If you truly mean what you said," I told her, "if you truly want to rebuild something, then you start with actions that cost you something other than embarrassment." Her brows knit, confused. What do you mean?" I leaned forward slightly, voice low and precise. "You want a second chance? Then you earn it without money. You go to therapy. You learn what control looks like. You learn why you chose silence over love. You learn how to set boundaries that protect relationships instead of destroying them. And if you come back to me in 6 months, without asking for a dime, then we'll talk about whether you get to know me again." Gregory scoffed. 6 months. We don't have 6 months. I didn't even glance at him. Then your problem is urgency, not family. My daughter stared at me, torn between panic and something like awakening. "What about the kids?" she whispered. I felt the ache deep in my chest, but I didn't let it steer me. "The kids are innocent," I said. "That's true. And because they are innocent, you should stop using them as leverage. If you want them to have a grandmother, you stop making your love conditional. You stop showing them that relationships are only worth having when there's something to gain." My daughter's hands trembled. "I don't know if I can do this." I nodded. "That's the first honest thing you've said today." Her breath shook. Gregory's eyes narrowed, anger simmering. "You're enjoying this," he snapped suddenly. "You're enjoying watching us beg." I looked at him, calm as tidewater. "No. If I were enjoying it, I'd have let you keep lying." His face flushed. I stood, walking toward the front door, not to chase them out, but to remind them I controlled my own threshold now. The door I once would have thrown open to them at any cost. My daughter rose unsteadily, following me. "Mom, please. I can't lose you again." The words, those words, tugged at something inside me. No pity. Not a weakness. Just an old ache. "You didn't lose me," I said quietly. "You left me." Her face crumpled. Gregory stood too, stepping closer, posture aggressive. "So that's it. You're just going to abandon your own family when they need you." I met his eyes. "No," I said. "I'm going to refuse to be used." His mouth opened, then closed. He looked furious, but trapped. My daughter stood at the edge of the room, shaking like she might break. And I realized something, watching her. She wasn't only afraid of losing money. She was afraid of losing the illusion that she could undo 12 years with one apology. I opened the door. The sea breeze rushed in, clean and bright. "Go," I said gently. "Take your crisis with you. Take your choices with you. And if you come back for me, not for what I can pay for." My daughter stared at the doorway like it was the edge of a cliff. Gregory moved first, stiff and angry, walking past me with a muttered curse I didn't bother to catch. My daughter lingered. For a long moment, she looked at me the way someone looks at something they once owned and suddenly realize they never deserved. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. But it was real." She stepped outside. I watched them walk to their battered car, their shoulders tight, their movements heavy. The ocean behind them made them look small, not because it was trying to humiliate them, but because the sea has a way of reminding you how little human drama matters in the long run. Their car door slammed. The engine coughed. They backed down my driveway and disappeared. I closed my door softly. The silence that returned wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. And as I stood there, listening to the waves, I knew the next part of this story wouldn't be about whether I gave them money. It would be about whether my daughter could become someone who deserved a relationship with me, even if it cost her the man who taught her to treat love like a threat. After the door closed, I stood there longer than I needed to, my hand still resting on the smooth wood as if it might speak back to me. The house felt different once they were gone, not emptier, but lighter, like a room after a storm has passed and taken the heavy air with it. I walked back into the living room slowly. The cushions on the sofa still held the faint impressions of their bodies, small hollows where desperation had sat. I stared at those marks for a moment, then reached down and smoothed them out with deliberate care. I had learned over the years that even invisible imprints deserve to be erased when they no longer served you. I poured myself a glass of white wine and stepped out onto the terrace. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, spreading gold and pink across the water. The ocean didn't judge. It didn't ask questions. It simply existed, vast and steady, reminding me that time keeps moving whether we cling to the past or not. I exhaled slowly, waiting for the emotional collapse I had once feared would follow an encounter like that. The sobbing. The shaking. The regret. It didn't come. What came instead was a deep, unfamiliar calm. For 12 years, I had imagined this moment in countless ways. I imagined screaming matches, tearful reconciliations, me collapsing into my daughter's arms, begging her not to leave again. I imagined myself handing over money without hesitation, grateful just to be needed. But the woman standing on that terrace was not the woman I had imagined. That woman had been forged quietly, patiently, through mornings of labor and nights of silence. She had been shaped by cinnamon and vanilla, by market chatter and empty apartments, by learning how to survive without anyone clapping for her efforts. I finished my wine and went inside, changing into comfortable clothes. Later that evening, I took a long walk along the beach, letting the cool sand ground me. Each step felt deliberate, like a promise to myself that I wouldn't backtrack emotionally just because old wounds had been reopened. The next morning, I woke early out of habit. The sun was barely up, the sky pale and quiet. I brewed coffee and carried my mug outside, sitting in a chair that faced the water. I watched seagulls skim the surface, free and unbothered. My phone buzzed. For a split second, my chest tightened. Old instincts die hard. But when I checked the screen, it wasn't Eleanor. It was Martha. "Well," her message read. "Did the ghosts show their true faces?" I smiled and typed back. "Every last one of them." She called me minutes later, her voice sharp and warm all at once. I knew it. They don't show up after 12 years with clean hands. "They didn't," I said. "They showed up with empty pockets." Martha snorted. "Of course they did." We talked for nearly an hour. I told her everything. Every word, every look, every crack in Gregory's mask, every moment Eleanor's old self peeked through before fear dragged her back under. Martha listened without interrupting, which was rare for her. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. You did the hardest thing, she said. You didn't rescue them from the consequences. I don't feel heroic, I admitted. I feel steady. That's better than heroic, she replied. Heroic burns out. Steady lasts. After the call, I went about my day as usual. I tended my small rose garden, pruning gently, cutting away what no longer bloomed. I baked in the afternoon, not for money this time, but for pleasure. The scent of lemon loaf filled the house, bright and clean. In the evening, a few women from our support group came over. They noticed immediately that something was different. You look lighter, Joanna said, handing me a plate she'd brought. Did you lose weight? I lost something, I replied. But not weight. They laughed, but Martha raised an eyebrow knowingly. When I told them what had happened, the room filled with murmurs of recognition. Every woman there had her own version of the story. Children who vanished, grandchildren kept at arm's length, sudden reappearances tied suspiciously to money or illness. You're braver than I was, one of them said softly. I gave my son everything when he came back. He disappeared again the moment his debts were paid. Another nodded. They don't come back for us. They come back for what we can fix. I didn't feel smug hearing that. I felt sad. Sad for how common the pattern was. Sad for how many women were taught that motherhood meant infinite sacrifice with no right to boundaries. That night, lying in bed, I thought about Eleanor, not with longing, but with clarity. I wondered if my refusal had planted something in her. A question. A crack. Or if fear would push her right back into the shape Gregory preferred. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Life returned to its rhythm, but with a subtle shift. I found myself humming more. Sleeping better. Laughing is easier. The ocean walks felt less like therapy and more like joy. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed again. A text message. From Eleanor. I didn't open it right away. I stared at the screen, letting myself feel the reaction before acting on it. There was tension, yes, but not panic. Curiosity, not desperation. When I finally opened the message, it was short. Mom. I started therapy today. I read it twice. No mention of money. No plea. No emotional theatrics. Just a statement. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I had learned something important. Silence is no longer cruelty when it's chosen for self-protection. A week later, another message came. Therapist says I've been living inside fear for years. I didn't realize how much of my life was built around keeping the peace. I read it slowly, my heart tight but controlled. Still, I didn't reply. I wasn't withholding affection. I was waiting to see if words would become actions. Another week passed. Then another. The messages continued, spaced out, unprompted. I moved out with the kids. We're staying with a friend. Gregory is angry. I'm scared. But I feel awake. I'm starting to understand what you meant about consequences. Each message chipped away at the wall she had built, not all at once, but steadily. I still didn't respond. It wasn't cruelty. It was boundaries. One evening, Martha raised an eyebrow as I set my phone face down during dinner. Still texting. Yes. Are you still ignoring me? For now. She nodded approvingly. Good. Let her sit with it. Growth needs quiet. 2 months after their visit, I received a longer message. It was the kind you could tell took time and trembling hands. Mom, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I deserve a reply. But I need to say it without expecting anything back. I abandoned you because it was easier than standing up for you. I let someone convince me that love was dangerous. I was wrong. I'm trying to become someone who can say that without asking for anything in return. I stared at the screen for a long time. That message didn't erase 12 years ago. It didn't heal the ache of missed birthdays or unknown grandchildren. But it did something else. It removed the transaction. For the first time, she wasn't asking for money, forgiveness, or access. She was taking responsibility. That night, I walked along the beach again, stars sharp overhead. I thought about how strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Not yet," and waits. I went home and typed a reply. One step at a time. I didn't add more. I didn't need to. Her response came quickly, a single word. "Thank you." Weeks passed. Life stayed full. Then, one morning, as I watered my roses, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." There was a pause, then a small, careful voice. "Hi, are you Annabelle?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "This is Lily." My breath caught. Lily. One of my grandchildren. My mom said I could call you," the voice continued, nervous but sincere. "She said you might say no, and that would be okay." I closed my eyes. "Hello, Lily," I said gently. "I'm glad you called." There was a shy laugh on the other end. I've never talked to a grandma before. Tears filled my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. Neither have I talked to a granddaughter before. We talked for 10 minutes. About school. About the ocean. About how she liked drawing and didn't like math. She didn't ask for gifts. She didn't know about money. She just wanted to talk. When the call ended, I sat very still. This wasn't reconciliation. This wasn't forgiveness. This was something quieter. Something earned. And as I looked out at the ocean again, I understood something with complete certainty. I had not closed the door to love. I had simply locked it until someone learned how to knock without demanding entry. After the call with Lily, I sat at the kitchen table long after my coffee had gone cold. The chair across from me was empty, but for the first time in years, the emptiness didn't ache. It felt patient, like something waiting without demanding. I replayed her voice in my mind, soft, careful, untrained in the art of manipulation adults so easily master. She hadn't asked for toys or money or promises. She hadn't cried or begged. She had simply existed on the other end of the line, curious and uncertain, as children are when they step into unknown spaces. That call didn't undo the past, but it shifted something forward. I told myself I would not rush. Not now. Not after everything. I had learned the hard way that urgency is often the enemy of wisdom. Over the next few days, Lily called again. Brief, polite calls, always asking first if it was a good time. Sometimes I said yes. Sometimes I said no. And each time I said no, she accepted it easily, without guilt or sulking. Children, I realized, understand boundaries better than adults who fear losing control. Eleanor didn't call. She didn't text during those days either. I suspected she was letting the space breathe, respecting the line I had drawn. That alone told me something had changed. One afternoon, Martha came over with a basket of figs and her usual sharp observations. "So," she said, setting the basket down, "you sound different." "I talked to my granddaughter," I said. Martha froze for half a second, then smiled slowly. "Ah." The door cracked open. "Cracked," I agreed. "Not thrown wide." She nodded approvingly. "Good. Wide open doors let storms in." We sat together on the terrace, eating figs and watching the sea. I told her about Lily, how gentle she was, how cautious, how she didn't sound like a child trained to demand affection. "That's because she wasn't raised with it," Martha said quietly. "Children know when love is unstable. They learn to approach carefully." Her words sat with me. That evening, Eleanor sent a message. "Lily told me she talked to you. Thank you for answering." I read it twice before responding. "I spoke to Lily. That's all." There was a long pause before her reply. "I understand." Another small shift. No push. No plea. Weeks passed like that. Lily called once or twice a week. Short conversations. Sometimes about school projects. Sometimes about a stray cat she'd named Pebble. Once, she asked me what my favorite dessert was. I laughed at that, telling her about coconut cream pie and the secret to making the crust flaky. She listened like I was handing her treasure. I sent her nothing but words. No gifts. No money. No promises. Just presents. One afternoon she asked, "Do you live near the ocean?" "Yes," I said. "Is it loud?" "Sometimes," I replied. "But mostly it's comforting." She thought about that. "I think I'd like that." "So would I," I said gently, and meant more than one thing. Then came the message that told me Eleanor's life was truly changing. "Mom," she wrote, "Gregory moved back to his parents. I asked him to go." I closed my eyes. Not relief. Not triumph. Grief. Because no matter how deserved, endings hurt. A minute later, another message arrived. "I didn't do it because of you. I did it because I finally heard myself think." That mattered. I didn't reply immediately. When I did, I chose my words carefully. "I hope you're safe." Her response came fast. "We are. It's hard. But it's quiet in a good way." Quiet. I smiled faintly. Time passed. Seasons shifted subtly along the coast. The roses bloomed again, brighter this time. Our support group grew. New women, new stories, all variations of the same quiet abandonment and slow rebirth. One afternoon during a meeting, a woman asked me, "How did you know when to let your daughter back in?" I didn't answer right away. "I didn't," I said finally. "I let the truth back in. The rest is still earning its way." 2 months after Lily's first call, Eleanor asked if she could visit. Not with Gregory. Just her. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied. 1 hour. Coffee. Nothing else. Her response came immediately. "Thank you." The day she arrived, the ocean was calm. The sky is pale blue, undecided. I made coffee and set out 2 cups. No pastries. No comfort food. This wasn't a celebration. When the doorbell rang, my heart didn't race. It beat steadily, like it trusted me to handle whatever came next. Eleanor stood on the porch alone. She looked thinner. Not worn. Lighter, somehow. Her posture was different. Less folded inward. Her eyes met mine directly. "Hi, Mom." "Come in," I said. She stepped inside carefully, like someone entering a sacred space they knew they hadn't earned. We sat at the table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she did something I didn't expect. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag and placed it between us. "I wrote this for therapy," she said. "But I wanted you to have it. You don't have to read it now. Or ever." I didn't touch it. "Tell me," I said. She nodded. "I spent years convincing myself you were strong enough not to need me. That you were fine. That was easier than admitting I was choosing comfort over courage." She paused, swallowing. "I let Gregory frame love as interference. I let him decide who mattered in my life. I did that. I waited. I'm not asking you to forgive me," she continued. "I'm not asking for money or help or access. I just needed to say this to your face." I studied her. Not the daughter I remembered. Not the stranger who abandoned me. This was someone in between, unfinished, uncertain, but awake. "That hour is almost over," I said. She nodded, accepting it without protest. Before she left, she turned back. "Lily talks about you like you're real," she said softly. "Not like an idea." I nodded. Children know the difference. When she left, I didn't feel hollow. I felt cautious hope. Weeks turned into months. Lily visited once, with Eleanor. A brief visit. Supervised. Gentle. Lily hugged me at the end, awkward and fierce all at once, like she'd been holding that urge back for years. I didn't cry until after they left. Gregory didn't contact me again. I heard through town gossip that he was angry, blaming everyone but himself. That didn't surprise me. Eleanor didn't defend him to me. That mattered more than apologies. Life didn't magically become perfect. There were still gaps. Still grief. Still memories that stung. But there was also honesty now. Space. Respect. One evening, sitting on the terrace as the sun set, Martha asked, "Do you think you did the right thing?" I watched the horizon, the way the light faded without drama. "I think," I said slowly, "that I finally did the thing that didn't cost me my dignity." She smiled. "That's the hardest lesson." I nodded. Love, I had learned, is not proven by how much you give. It's proven by what you refuse to sacrifice. Part 5. The months that followed did not rush forward in dramatic scenes or grand reconciliations. They unfolded quietly, the way real healing always does, without announcements, without applause, without guarantees. I learned that peace does not arrive as a single moment. It settles in layers. Some mornings, I still woke up with the instinct to check my phone, half expecting silence to punish me again. Other mornings, I woke with sunlight spilling across the floor and the calm certainty that I was no longer waiting for anyone to choose me. Lily continued to visit, always with Eleanor, always for short periods. At first, Eleanor hovered, careful, apologetic in her movements, as if one wrong word might shatter the fragile bridge we were building. Over time, that tension softened. She learned to sit back. To let silence exist without filling it. To let Lily and me talk without supervising every breath. One afternoon, Lily brought me a drawing. It was simple. Crayon waves, a crooked sun, two stick figures holding hands. "That's us," she said proudly. My throat tightened, but I smiled. "I like it very much." She tilted her head. "Do you think we can draw together next time?" "Yes," I said. "I'd like that." Eleanor watched from across the room, her eyes glossy but quiet. She didn't interrupt. She didn't redirect. She let the moment belong to us. That restraint told me more about her growth than any apology ever could. Gregory remained absent. I didn't ask about him. Eleanor didn't bring him up unless necessary. From fragments I heard elsewhere, I knew he had not taken accountability. He spoke of betrayal, of manipulation, of being turned against. It was the same language he had always used. Language that painted him as a victim of other people's boundaries. I felt no satisfaction in that knowledge. Only confirmation. One evening, Eleanor stayed a few minutes after Lily went to play in the garden. She stood near the doorway, hands clasped, unsure. "Mom," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Do you ever regret saying no to us that day?" I considered the question carefully. Not because it was difficult, but because it deserved honesty. "No," I said. "I regret the years that led up to that day. But I don't regret protecting myself." She nodded slowly. "I think, if you hadn't said no, I wouldn't be here like this. I would have taken the money and stayed the same." Her words carried no self-pity, only clarity. "That's why no was necessary," I replied. She exhaled shakily. "I'm learning that love isn't proven by how much you endure." I smiled faintly. That lesson took me decades. Life continued. Our support group expanded into something more structured. Weekly meetings, shared meals, practical help for women navigating loneliness, estrangement, and rediscovered independence. We didn't call ourselves survivors. We called ourselves women who chose differently. On Wednesdays, laughter filled my living room. Real laughter. Not the polite kind used to mask pain. Stories were shared, sometimes heavy, sometimes ridiculous. We baked together, burned things occasionally, and laughed harder when we did. My home no longer echoed. Eleanor began therapy consistently. Not the performative kind done to appease others, but the difficult kind that dismantles old beliefs and exposes uncomfortable truths. She didn't report every breakthrough to me. She didn't ask for praise. She simply showed up differently. She set boundaries with her parents. She took a modest job, one she enjoyed, even if it paid less than her old one. She stopped chasing appearances and started building stability. Months later, she told me something that made me sit down. I realized I was afraid of being alone, she said. So I accepted control instead. That admission was heavy, honest, painful. And now? I asked. Now I'm learning that being alone is better than being erased. I nodded. Yes, it is. Lily grew more comfortable with me. She stopped asking permission for every question. She asked about my childhood, about her grandfather, about why people sometimes stop talking to each other. I answered simply, without bitterness. Children don't need the full weight of adult mistakes. They need truth scaled to their size. One afternoon, as we baked together, flour dusting the counter, Lily asked, "Did my mom make a mistake?" Eleanor froze. I wiped my hands and knelt beside Lily. "Your mom made choices," I said gently. "Some were good. Some hurt people. What matters is that she's choosing differently now." Lily thought about that, then nodded. "I make mistakes when I draw sometimes. I don't throw the paper away. I try again." I smiled. "That's a very good way to look at it." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. Time passed. 1 year after that first knock on my door, Eleanor came to me, not with urgency, not with fear, but with a quiet request. "Mom," she said, "would you like to come to Lily's school recital?" I paused. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I wanted to check myself, to ensure I wasn't acting from hunger for lost time. "Yes," I said. "I would." At the recital, I sat in the audience like any other grandmother. Lily waved wildly when she spotted me. I waved back, my heart steady, full but not frantic. Eleanor sat beside me, not leaning on me, not distant either, just present. Afterward, Lily ran into my arms without hesitation. It startled me, how natural it felt, how easily my body remembered what to do. That night at home, I cried alone, not from pain, but from gratitude. Gratitude that I had not settled for a version of love that required self-betrayal. I thought often about the woman I had been 12 years earlier, the one who would have given everything for scraps of affection. I didn't judge her. She did the best she could with the understanding she had. But I was no longer her. The ocean continued its rhythm, unchanged. Some days wild, some days calm. It taught me something essential. Relationships, like tides, must move naturally. When forced, they destroy shorelines. One evening Eleanor asked, "Do you think we'll ever be the way we were?" I shook my head gently. "No. And that's okay." She looked uncertain. "What we're building now is different," I continued. "It has awareness, choice, respect. The old version didn't." She nodded, absorbing that. "And if one day you decide you don't want this anymore?" she asked quietly. I met her eyes. "Then I will grieve. But I will survive. I won't abandon myself again." She smiled sadly. "I wish I'd learned that sooner." "So do many people," I replied. "Years from now, I know memories will soften. Pain always does when it's not fed daily. But I will never forget the lesson. Love without boundaries is not love. Forgiveness without accountability is not healing. And family, when it is real, does not require you to disappear." On my terrace, watching another sunset bleed gold into the sea, I felt complete, not because everything was perfect, but because I was no longer afraid to protect my peace. The inheritance gave me comfort, but dignity gave me freedom. And freedom gave me the ability to choose who stays, who leaves, and who earns the right to knock. I raised my glass to the horizon, alone but not lonely, connected but not consumed. For the first time in my life, love met me where I stood, without conditions. And that was more than enough.